Got them all over. Yeah, we're live. I'm a couple minutes late. 7:09. That's because I was doing some calculations, reading some comments. The Coyote versus LS video has stirred up some emotions. Show me on the doll where the Coyote hurt you. I got comments on both sides. I got LS people telling me that I'm a Ford guy. I got Ford guys telling me that I'm an LS guy. You know, whatever somebody can say to, like, you know, because they're insecure and they want to put somebody down, that's what's going to happen. It's interesting because I thought that the reason that I use the DYNO is so that we can look at something and evaluate it, unbiasedly. We can look at these things and go, hey, look, this one did this and this one did this. But you can't do that, at least not according to these people. But the interesting thing is, we talked a little bit about this, about the on the other live feed that we did earlier today. So we were talking about the fact that when I ran this Coyote, this is way back. This is late 2010, early 2011 when I did all this testing. So it's right when the Coyote came out, and this was a Gen 1 Coyote, and it was impressive nonetheless. I mean, there's lots of Coyote stuff out there, and the newer versions are even better. So I know that all the LS guys, you want to love the LS and you want to be the best thing in the world. That's all great. You have one and it works and you got a turbo on it. It's fantastic. It does the things you want to do. That's fantastic. That actually doesn't stop the Coyote from also doing the things that it does. It doesn't stop a Big Block from doing the things that it does. It doesn't stop a Honda from doing the things that it does, or an AMR 500 powered Chevy Sprint 3-cylinder 1-liter motor from doing the things that it does. People have a hard time with that. It's very obvious from the comments that you cannot show something like this and then have people not react violently to it, because it tells them that they picked the wrong thing. And it's really, really kind of comical when you read some of these things. You're like, yep, let me guess which thing you have. And for some reason, I don't understand. And that's why I'm going to keep doing this channel. I'm going to keep doing exactly this. This is why I don't understand why I like to do so many different kinds of motors, is because there are good things in all of them. Like the little Pontiac 350. Yeah, it doesn't make very much power, but it'd be really cool to put it in a Ventura or something like that. And we can make it make more power. Whatever it is, like the little Sprint motor, whatever it is, and wherever it's starting, we can make it better. And that's the thing. Take what you have and then make it better. Or hopefully add boost to it, because that's a really good way to make it better. Whether it's an LS, whether it's but what happens is guys get wrapped up. We've talked about this many times. Guys get wrapped up in their own thing. They're like, their personal identity is wrapped up into their choice, into the thing that they own, into their political views, into their religious views, whatever they are. Their personal identity is wrapped up in that. It shouldn't be. The fact that you have a Camaro or an LS swapped Fox Mustang or whatever it is, if somebody else has a Coyote swapped one, dude, good on them. That's okay. It's okay that they have that. They don't have to have the same thing that you have. There's no doubt that Coyotes make a lot of power. There's also no doubt that they're a lot more expensive than an LS. I mean, like I said, I've seen one of them, and I go to wrecking yards a lot, and I've only ever seen one of them in a wrecking yard. So to find them would be hard enough. It'd be like finding an aluminum LS, which I've never found in a wrecking yard. I mean, I found 5.3s, but not an aluminum one, not like a 6-liter aluminum one or a 6.2 aluminum one, a one that's going to make lots of power, NA. And so we get that, and I put it in the video that when I was talking about it, I'm like, look, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this because I chose a 5.3, but I chose a 5.3 because it's far and away, it's the base motor for Chevrolet. It was their base engine for a lot of these trucks. For when I say a lot, I mean millions of these trucks. And so those are the ones that I see. When I go to the wrecking yard, I'll see a 4.8 or a 5.3, and I will see at least a dozen of those and almost nothing of anything else. So that tells me that those are the ones that they made the most of. And that's the one that I want to get. That's the one that I tell people to go get because it's available. Yeah, it'd be better if you got a 6-liter. It'd be better if you got a 6.2. And if we wanted to make everybody feel like warm and fuzzy, we would go get a 6.2-liter LS3 and make it equal the power output of the 5-liter Coyote, and then everybody would be happy. Actually, an LS3 makes more power than a stock Coyote. At least it makes more power than that year Coyote did, because that one made like 450 or something, or 460. And when we run an LS3 on the engine dyno, it makes 485 or 490, the way that we run it with headers, the way that we ran the Coyote. It does better than the Coyote. But it should. It's bigger. but it doesn't have the specific torque output that a Coyote does. None of the GM cars, none of the GM motors do. And there's nothing that you guys can do to an LS to have it have that sort of specific output. I've never seen anybody do with an LS what you can do with a Coyote. And I didn't even try to do it. All I did was just throw some stuff at it, basically. There's no science behind it at all. It's just stuff that was readily available. And having that sort of specific torque output is really, really impressive. So that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with giving credit where credit is due. But actually tonight, what I want to talk about is, and because this happened both with the LS and with the Coyote, and it's interesting, and it's always something that we as performance people, that we have to do. It's always a choice that we have to make. So both on the LS, like with the LS motor on the 5.3, we ran the fast manifold and a slightly smaller camshaft, and then stepped up to a short runner intake away from the long runner fast, and then a slightly bigger camshaft. And it did make more peak power, but the thing that it did was hurt torque. So it made more peak power at a much higher engine speed. But we sacrificed like 30 or 40 foot-pounds of torque. So the question is, and that was one of the other videos, would you do that? Would you make that trade? Well, the same thing happens with the Coyote, because the same thing happens with every internal combustion engine when you do that to runner length. And in this case, we didn't change the camshaft. All we did change was the intake manifold. So we took off the factory early Gen 1 Coyote intake manifold, which is a long runner design and enhances torque production. We know it does that because we changed it to something else and saw exactly what it does when we change it. In this case, we changed it to the Boss intake manifold. And we even went with a slightly bigger throttle body because the Boss would accept that. And it did exactly what we expected. Horsepower went from 545 or so up to 571. So it made more peak power. And it made that at about 800 or 900 RPM higher in the rev range. So to get that power, you have to rev it. The downside, again, lost 40 foot-pounds of torque in doing that. So changing the intake manifold, changing the runner length on that had a dramatic effect, both on the Coyote and on the LS. Although we did make a cam change on the LS, most of that was the intake manifold, by the way. It'd be interesting now to go back and put the other camshaft in it and see what that does with that long runner manifold, because I don't think we changed the peak torque very much, if at all, with the changing camshaft. I know that we changed it with the intake manifold because that's pretty typical of a short runner manifold. And then we saw a similar thing with the Boss, and I would argue that the Boss intake manifold, the change in runner length is not nearly as extreme going from the factory manifold, the early Coyote, to the Boss, as it was that we did going from the fast to the other one. But they both made peak power at very high RPM, so less than 8,000, but 7,700 or so in that range. And they both did a similar thing. So the question is, and this will be our poll for tonight, while everybody is yelling and screaming at each other, all the LS and Coyote people. Torque. Okay, so the poll for tonight is, would you trade the extra 25 horsepower on the big end for the 40 foot-pound loss in torque? And this happens through most of the curve. So let me know what you guys think. We'll get that going, get that up and going. And the interesting thing is to hear and a lot of times the comments that are in this particular one about the Coyote and the LS are not directed at me, which is it's even better, but they're arguing with each other. Oh, but this guy, and naming some racer guy, this guy went really fast, and then this guy, but this guy really fast. Oh yeah, but everybody swaps LSs into all of these things. Go look it up on the internet. So therefore they're better. And then somebody throws out, yeah, but none of them have gone as fast as John Mahovitz has with the 4.6. And so there's all this bickering thing. I'm like, that the people that are arguing about that don't know any of those people, haven't been involved in any of those builds. None of those builds are theirs. And so I'm like, well, why does that matter? Let's just go do your thing, man. It's all good. Jay's Garage, I think both are great platforms. I like to hear it, Jay. I think the Coyote's a little pricey. Yeah, they are. Although I don't know what I honestly don't know. And somebody actually brought up a good point with the Coyote stuff, because we always say that the Coyotes is expensive. And like I said, I've never seen one. I've never even seen one in a truck. But if you got a truck version, and if you were doing heads cam and intake manifold on it, you could start with that. Or if you're doing that, maybe change the camshaft. See, I don't know what I think that the truck cams, they have a different firing order, but the truck cams I think are probably milder than the Mustang cams are. But and I don't think, unfortunately, I think that there are a few people that have changed camshafts in Coyotes, so there might be stock cams out there for sale. But could you get a truck Coyote 5-liter and then put car Coyote cams in it and then run that, so that you didn't have to? Would that be a better way to go than trying to source a Mustang Coyote? Because they're not gonna, they didn't make, if they're like Chevrolet, they didn't make anywhere near as many Mustangs as they made trucks with that same engine in it. So I'm just looking for a cheaper way around for Coyote guys. There should be lots of those 5-liters in trucks in the wrecking yards by now. I mean, they've had them in their trucks for a really long time. So I don't know why there wouldn't be a whole bunch of them. And it is nice because if you look at stock for stock, the Coyote makes a lot more power. And the reason that it does that is because it already, like the BLS, has a good intake manifold, has good cylinder heads, has good camshaft, has compression, has variable cam timing. It has lots of things that the LS doesn't have, and it makes more power to start out with. So guys are saying, well, we don't, and that was this guy making the statement. We the Coyote community doesn't normally change camshafts. We just put boost to it because these things respond so well to boost. I'm like, well, they respond exactly like every other motor to boost, because when you add boost to them, they multiply whatever is there. There is just more there on a Mustang Coyote than there obviously is on or a stock Coyote than there is on a stock 5.3, but not more than a stock 6.2 or LS, an LS3 or something. And also the other thing, and I'm going to do this next to the Coyote guys because now they deserve it. We're going to introduce and honestly, to be fair, then I would be going the other way. But what I want to do now is compare it to an LT, so to an L83. Because a heads cam and intake L83 makes more than the Coyote does. So, it has compression, has variable cam timing, has really good cylinder head flow, has an intake manifold, it's modern. The thing is, I don't have a modern Coyote to compare that to. And quite honestly, I don't know how many guys are taking a DI Coyote and putting heads or cam and intake manifold in it, compared to just adding boost. And I don't know on a Coyote, on a DI Coyote, are guys putting big power to those, because how do they get the fuel to it? I'm not hip on the whole modern Coyote scene. My stuff kind of stops at the Gen 2 deal, where you're still doing port injection and you have good cylinder heads and they had the availability of the Cobra Jet intake and the stuff that you would need. And it is a lot nicer if you can just add boost to the motor that you have and make 1,000 horsepower. You don't have to put the cam in it like you do with the LS, but it's still a pretty cheap way to go. So let's see. See, Burnsy's here. I think you're a fun guy. You're supposed to say that to a mushroom, right? I like this guy. He's the only person I've ever met besides me that says any cam is good for boost. They all do the same thing. I'm lost why I'm in this room. With 4 valves, always outflow a 2-valve. Nope. There are 4-valve heads that don't flow as much as some 2-valve heads. It depends on exactly which ones you're talking about. Not making money without spending dollars should be everyone's goal. It's not, though. There are lots of people where money is not an issue, so they want to do whatever is the maximum kind of thing. Coyote makes big RPM easy. They need oil pumps, and you're afraid of its complexity. It also makes great power. It's unbelievably compact. Yep. Should Gen 3 Hemi with a cam only have 10 to 12 degrees of timing at wide open throttle? No. They normally want what an LS wants. We normally run on the engine dyno when they're cold and they have good fuel in them. We run 30 at wide open throttle. I'd like to see a Coyote versus a North Star. I don't think a North Star is going to make anywhere near what a Coyote does, right? I mean, isn't it rated at like 150 or 200 less horsepower? A Pinot 2-liter, yes. If that's your question, yes is the answer. Hot rodded Briggs and Stratton motors are cool. Yeah, but look at the ones that Clay Smith does over there. It's his son. Where they do the junior dragster stuff. That's all awesome. It's all Billy awesome like junior dragster motors. It's very cool. Richard didn't compare size and weight between the two. We have no way to scale them, so I don't know, and I didn't measure them, but that's actually irrelevant. In other words, quit crying. The double overhead cam V is superior to cam and block. Why not GM's prototype Coyote against Ford's Coyote? What is GM's prototype Coyote? Is that the new LT6 thing? The only way would be able to put 4 valves on it. With 2, you'll always be at a disadvantage to valve area. Okay, Gen 3, if you want to run at 10 speed and be able to control it and make trans changes a lot easier than the GM 10L80. What are common low oil pressure issues on an LS? Wear, lifter bores, front and rear cover seal issues. There's actually a plug in the oil galley under the front cover. That's another potential issue. The barbell. Got the taste of $1 million man, but the skills of a kindergartner playing with Legos. Whatever. Hey, it's all about having fun. Want to get a beater C4 Corvette? Put it in put the LH2 North Star with twin turbos and a Chrysler and a Ford rear. It's just all good, right? That's everybody just behaving and being happy together, right? Lines that the Coyote is a completely different class of motor. Therefore, my hours at LS is much more impressive being a push-rod motor, hanging right there with Ford's 4-cam race motor. Yeah. Again, the thing that people don't realize is, and this is just like religion, politics, and everything else, you get to have your opinion about something, and I support it. I support your right to have that opinion. Even if I don't share your opinion, I don't have to. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that we all get to like do and say all of this great stuff. Two-stroke outboard powerhead. I've not done too much two-stroke outboard testing. Leave the Mopars out of this. I'm still scrolling back, guys. I'm still scrolling back. I'm trying to get to you. I'm trying to get to you. Okay. Does the Coyote come in vans? Coyote's a good engine too. Too bad it's on a bad platform. See, throwing shade on Fords. I have to feel this video came from my week-long argument on your Facebook comments. I don't recognize the name, so I don't know which video you were commenting on. Godzilla still cam blocks us probably less wide. Give me push Roger, give me 10. Mr. Call just sounded off. I love the LS simplicity, but the Coyote adjustability. The nice thing about like double overhead cams, especially if you can phase all 4 of them, is you can get a lot of cool things going on with cam timing. Delete the cam phasers and use adjustable cam gears. Why would you do that? Then you have them fixed. James, what's up? The LS is a Windsor. We're definitely going to get 4 guys saying that. Coyote is pretty expensive, and Ford computers are not good. Yes, we can use torque converters and gearing to make up for the lower torque. Coyote tuning is expensive and complicated, but 1,000 horsepower sealed is ridiculous. Has anybody ever torn apart a Coyote to see what the ring gap is when they're sealed, when they're unopened? Have you run the LS with VVT, or do you just delete the VVT? When I do the testing on the engine dyno, we always get rid of VVT. I think Brian and James have run VVT on a Gen 3 or a Gen 4 motor up at Brian Tooley Racing. It doesn't seem to help nearly as much on the Gen 3 and Gen 4 stuff as the word that I've been given compared to the DI Gen 5 stuff. So long story short, Coyote has 4 valves, which allows for better low-end torque, and the LS only has 2, so it's at a disadvantage, but it is also much cheaper. No on the low-end torque thing in the 4-valve deal. Just an intake cam swap. The Coyote does well with displacement, and the LS53, I would suspect the Coyote outperforms the LS. It's just not a Windsor. F-150 Coyote is a Coyote. Just put Mustang cams in. Yeah. I see Coyote engines on eBay for $4,000 to $5,000. That's big money. That's like 10 times what a LS costs. Oh, there you go. Overly built AMC. That's right. Yes, but you don't have to do heads, cam, and intake on a Coyote. You don't have to do heads, cam, and intake on an LS either. Camshaft and cam and springs are really what you need on an LS. I see a 2013 F-150 running at Copart. Buy it now. 2,000 complete. See? Richard, have you done a Coyote versus LS3? I don't think I've done that specific one, but I did another Coyote versus LS video a while back, and I had a bunch of different engines, and we showed what it took to eventually get up to where the Coyote was. I think LS3 was part of that. We'll leave the Mopars out of this. Gen 3 Coyotes are DI and port. Yep. That Fender Garage on YouTube does truck Coyote swaps. Watch on YouTube. So is he swapping a truck Coyote into something else? You just run normal fuel pressure to the DI pump. Yeah, I know how they work. We've run them on the engine dyno before. We run DI stuff on the engine dyno before. Gen 3 Coyote Power Pack is $2,300. Crate Gen 3 is $9,200 if you want it new. Yeah, that's not cheap. I think it'll be good. Gen 3 Coyote to LT, apples to apples. I know, but now I got to make the Coyote people mad. So I got to do the LT versus the early Coyote. So now that then the Coyote guys will be mad. I've never done a Gen 3 Coyote, so I don't have one. I don't have any of that data. A Cleavor. There you go. A Gen 2 Coyote doesn't need oil pump gears. Did they change them in Gen 2? I'm here with Ford and Chevy peeps. I'm not either one of those. And I like that you have a 1UZ. I would very much like to run one of those on the dyno. Someone make a 4-valve head for an LS? Yes, they did. Mercury Marine did that. Coyote is comparable to Honda K-Series engine ×2. You can hook up E85 on the latest version with just a tune. Somebody mentioned the Mercury Marine and stuff. The North Star LH2 is rated at 320. Okay, that's a good amount. Godzilla versus LS. I mean, small block Chevy, big block Chevy, LS Ford's lost this battle for decades. I'm told that the LS cylinder heads or the Godzilla cylinder heads are not fantastic. Got my truck north, wide open throttle, fueling good, and my 6-liter. Gonna start creeping timing in using math flow. Cool. North Star LC3 is rated at 469 horsepower. What is that in? Is that a like supercharged one? Just because the LT6 has overhead cams does not in caps. I mean, they ripped off Ford. If anything, they ripped off Ferrari. They even admit it. Yeah, I don't think Ford can be given credit for double overhead cam motors. All that stuff happened long before Ford. Intake tanks on 351 Cleveland help. I've not tested that directly. '85 is good. I do Gen 3 swaps into 6s and 60s and 70s Broncos with a 10R80. Oh, that would be cool. Why were the 3 humps in the torque curve of the Coyote? Intake manifold and variable cam. Sure, I got an 03S10 5.3 truck Norris cam, stock 4L60 with a shift kit installed. I'd be worried about the 4L60 if you got a cam to 5.3. Be better that's in an S10 because it's lighter. I don't know what gears are in it, and I don't know what tires on it. But something in the 25 to 2800 RPM range should be fine. Torn a Gen 1 Coyote apart. I've taken it down to just the short block, but I didn't take pistons out of it to see because we swapped heads and cams, and I've done all that stuff, but I didn't measure the ring gap though. I saw your comment on inertia dynos. That's good, I guess. I could do some research on that and see. I've obviously never used one. Found a coyote trying to eat my chickens. I hope you took care of it. I saw somebody post that about for all of you people that love coyotes, wait till it's your dog that gets eaten by a coyote or whatever. Wow. Scrolling. LU3 was the SC version North Star. Okay. Good evening. I'm building my Coyote for an S197, sleeved 11.5. Gen 1 head's going to be running 20 to 30 PSI of boost on it. Factory crank, cylinder heads, and cam. What LS can do that? All of them. And the 20 to 30 range, that's a really big spread. Sadly, this is going to be a street car, but now it's a strip only. Carb LS engine, the best budget swap for a DIY. Guys, anyone have any examples of a Coyote with a carb? I don't think I've ever seen one. Does somebody make a carbureted intake for those? 6-liter would be interesting versus the Coyote. Well, if you take a look, I have a video up where I compared a 4.8, a 5.3, a 6.0, and I think a 6.2 to a Coyote. In fact, it was the same Coyote. So you can take a look at that, but it wasn't to this 5.3, so that we had new information in here. But you can take a look at that and see, like I said, a stock 6.2 LS3 versus a Coyote, the 6.2 makes more power, and LS3 makes more power than this stock Coyote, than this Gen 1 Coyote did, by a fairly good bit. It makes 490 something horsepower and 480 something foot-pounds of torque. So it does good. The stock 6-liter that I did, like I have a Gen, I can take a look at the, like the LH6 maybe, or the LY6 rather. What was that? Probably 440 horsepower, something like that. So that would be comparable to a Coyote, to this generation Coyote. Yeah, stock cam 443 horsepower, 467 foot-pounds of torque. So that would be, that 6-liter would be comparable, and an LS2 would make as much or more than a Coyote would. So an aluminum, you know, high compression 243 headed kind of thing. 69 Mustang Fastback, that's very nice. They have carb conversions for the Coyotes, okay. I haven't done a Ford 6.2. I have a carbureted Coyote blow-through CSU with an 88 millimeter. Let's see, that's cool. We modified the Chevy so much that it was hard for me to do comparisons. I felt the Ford does more with less cubic inches. Richard, have you done any ignition system tests comparisons, like MSD versus HEI versus points? You mean on some sort of small block Chevy or something like that? Any sort of modern engine like an LS, I wouldn't change coils and things like that. The factory stuff works really good, even up to 1,500 horsepower, which is what we ran, as long as we can control the dwell. On a typical carbureted deal, on a carbureted, you know, 400 horsepower carbureted dual plane small block kind of thing, I don't think you're going to see much of a difference, honestly. If the points are new and they're adjusted, and you or run an electronic like an HEI, or run an ignition amplifier on either one of those, I don't know that you're going to see a lot. It's when the spark starts getting marginal, you try to have too much gap, or you have some other sort of issue. If you have misfire and you cure the misfire, you'll definitely see power. If you don't have misfire, you're going to be really hard pressed to see some sizable gains from the ignition stuff. Let's see. Are Gen 3 Hemis harder to tune than the LS or Coyotes because of the different map that Mopar uses? Oh, Gen 3 Hemis, okay. I don't know. Does somebody out there tune? James, do you know if you're a Coyote or a Gen 3 Hemi tuner? I'll comment again, as it might have been missed. Newest Engine Masters carb CFM. Airhead measured lower but made more horsepower. I'm not familiar with the test that you're talking about. I haven't seen it, so I don't know how to comment about it. I don't know anything about it. Don't have any data on it. Out of curiosity, ballpark, how many engine setups have you dynoed? I don't know. I've been doing it for 30 years, so it's a lot. Where did the Coyote outperform the 5.3 in the curve? Everywhere, except possibly down at 2,000 and 2,500, but we didn't load it down there. Let's see. I put an MSD ignition coil on my 350 because it's actually less expensive than a stock one at the time. That makes perfect sense. Tyler, that's a good point, actually. The other thing to consider is that the transmissions typically found behind a Coyote, especially the newer ones, are far better than what you typically find behind the LS. The 8 or 10 or 20 speed transmissions, whatever they have behind Coyotes now, are the real deal. And they're a big part of why they accelerate like they do. I found that I do still have the stock injector. As we discussed previously, this is not enough for my 427 LS3 targeting 730 horsepower. No, I would put 80s in that. What does a 6-liter cost from the wrecking yard? All of the V8s are the same from my wrecking yard, so it doesn't matter what it is. They're all the same. Jonathan Edwards, I did see an article on an Engine Labs website. 590 horsepower was the dyno horsepower in the article, 477 foot-pounds of torque with moderate cams, but the runner's really long clearance was the issue. I didn't see what you said above that, so I don't know what you're referring to. Larger carb measured less airflow through the hat, but made more horsepower. So I'd need to see what motor it is and what they were doing, and I'd need to see the data and stuff. I don't know. Did they have a leak or something somewhere? I got an LQ4 for 500 out of the junkyard in Dallas. That's good. Can't believe how extremely loud the Coyotes are. Guys do tend to put loud exhaust on them. I know my buddy Jimmy has a Coyote. His is I don't know what year it is. I should know. But he has a Hooker Blackheart exhaust on it. It's pretty loud. What horsepower level do you recommend billet oil pumps and crank gears? I don't think it's a horsepower level as much as it is an RPM level. And I don't know about the later ones. The early ones were definitely recommended. I do have lots of 6-liter videos up for you to peruse. Is the T56 a good trans? It's better than a T5. An F-150 and a Coyote Mustang don't have the same cams. On ignition systems for any application, you see lots of claims of more horsepower for better spark. Others say high compression, 12.5 to 1 needs higher voltage, whatever. More cylinder pressure does require, can require more spark energy. And that's why when we have boosted applications, that's why we bring the gap in. And on a 12.5 to 1, I might be tempted to bring the gap in too, just so that you can get the spark to jump across there. we normally on the engine dyno, if we're running an LS, we have multiple coil packs. We don't ever have an ignition amplifier on them. We just have the factory coil packs. But on a distributor one, we have an MSD ignition amplifier on everything that we run, just because that's the way that the dyno is hooked up. It just makes it easy for us to just plug it in. But we do on real high horsepower stuff, sometimes on nitro stuff, definitely on boosted stuff, run less plug gap and a colder plug. Yeah, Tristan, there's lots of 6-liter videos up, lots and lots of them. Do 6-liter max as a search and it will come up. Thanks for the video on boosted cylinder air fuel individual. I cut my plugs open. 3 and 7 are leanest. I'm going to move the O2 sensors to the cylinders. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's like I said, one way to do it with just one O2 sensor is just to weld in a whole bunch of bungs on your headers. I mean, that's a lot of work too, but at least you could get lots more information without having to do 8 O2s. The Trailblazer SS intake be a necessary upgrade, an 800 wheel horsepower setup, or I'm better off spending the money elsewhere. I have a Gen 3 truck intake. What would save me about 1 to 2 psi boost difference, maybe? What is your combination? Are you making the power that you want to make right now? And do you have a turbo that will support that? If you have a turbo that will support that, I wouldn't change the intake manifold. You're going to make that power. You're going to make that power with a stock truck intake manifold. 15 plus cams are the basic same truck versus car, but a different firing order for NVH while towing. What is the power differential on the truck Coyote versus the Coyote that's in the Mustang? Why is there a horsepower difference between the two? Doesn't the 5-liter Coyote melt rear pistons? Does anybody have a comment on that? I'm not familiar. It was Freiberger's big block that made 1,000 CFM. He made a bunch of changes. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know why they would have a smaller carburetor or a bigger carburetor make more power and show less airflow through the. I don't know how you can change the brake specific air consumption number by doing that. I don't know how you would make more power with less air with a carburetor change. Doing something else, I could see that maybe, but I don't know how you do that on a carburetor change. Let's see. Will, thanks for watching. How do you feel about Muncie transmissions running a 6-liter and an 80 Camaro? Is it a Muncie 4-speed? Can swap on Coyote, not completely necessary. I want 890s at 152, the stock Gen 1 truck Coyote with locked truck cams and the carb setup. Have you ever tested a front sump oil pan on a Coyote? Nope, I have not. I have not run any other oil pan on a Coyote. Intake cams on 11 through 18 truck engines were weaker, along with the truck manifold favoring torque. Okay, so the intake manifold on the truck is also different. Does anybody know how much power an NV 4500 will take? Differential is due to the compression on the 15 to 17 and intake manifold. 18 plus, it's just the manifold. Nicholas, you with the combination that you have, you can max out that turbo. So I wouldn't spend the money on a truck intake on a Trailblazer. Turn to the Predator mic. Yeah, I didn't plug my mic in enough early enough. What's more efficient, a twin screw blower or a centrifugal? You mean like as an absolute? You have to tell me which ones you're talking about, and you'd have to define. You have to tell me your definition of efficiency. The Carb Whisperer and Extremely Fine Tuning is how they did it. How they made magic air. Gen 4 Hemi versus a Coyote. The people that are saying that universally a centrifugal is more efficient, you can't make a universal statement like that because that's not true. There are some centrifugals, and where are you talking about it? Where is it? Are you measuring it? Where on the island are you measuring it? Where are you running it? It may not be more efficient. You need to talk about whether this is a P600 versus a 2650 or a whatever the 3100 or whatever the new blower is, or whether it's an AMR 500 versus a YSI. You need to look at the two blowers that you're talking about. Then you need to look at where you're using those. And then you could decide, okay, where are they on their respective maps? And then you could go, well, this one is more efficient than this one at this point. That's the way that I would do it. Then the other problem you have with twin screw versus centrifugal is you're going to have to change the intake manifold. So you're going to be changing something else. So you're going to affect the power curve pretty dramatically. Also, you're going to be changing the response rate, as a couple of people pointed out. The twin screw is going to have immediate boost. As soon as you get to wide open throttle, you'll have all the boost that you want. A centrifugal is not going to do that. If you stab the throttle at 2,000 RPM, you're going to have 2 pounds of boost. You stab the throttle on a twin screw at 2,000 RPM, whatever boost you've pulleyed it to, you're going to have. It's going to be making, it's going to rise a little bit, but you'll have 10 or 15 or 20 pounds, whatever you pulleyed it to. So the fact that one of them has a charge temperature that's 8 degrees lower than the other because on a compressor map efficiency, one is a little better than the other, that's like this much of the equation. And then the immediate boost response is like this won't even fit on my channel here. Is this much of the equation. So we're talking about little things, but we should be talking about big things. James, yeah, I think the vast majority of people in their vehicle driving around would be way happier with a positive displacement blower, whether it's a Hellcat blower, which makes immediate boost response, a TVS or a Whipple or a Kenny Bell or something like that. They're just going to be much happier with that, because when you nail the throttle, people want that thing to happen right now, and a centrifugal doesn't do that. There are applications where that's going to be beneficial, like we talked about with traction and stuff, and guys running big Pro Chargers and stuff on no prep classes and stuff, and then it works really well. It depends on what you want and when you want it. So now I'm down at the bottom. How's our poll doing? 69%. They would not trade that 25 horsepower. They're all wanting. These are all my torque people. Now we can go to live chat. Live. It's all the way live. Leaf blowers. That's right. Just long extension cords, man. What's better choice, drive-by-wire or drive-by-cable? I don't like drive-by-wire. I think from a tuning standpoint, you can do lots of creative things with drive-by-wire that you can't do with the cable, but I don't like requesting wide open throttle. I like commanding wide open throttle, and the drive-by-wire doesn't do that. It can decide through a variety of other parameters that you don't really want that, and I don't want it doing that. I want it, when I say wide open throttle, when I go to wide open throttle, it better already be there at wide open throttle. That's why I don't like it. Came back from pulling engine in the truck. Should have it out by Thursday. Okay, Todd. If you're going to do an NA 5.3 with a 5-speed and S10, what cam would you run? I don't care about horsepower. I just want it to sound ridiculous and be drivable. So that's the problem, is the ridiculous sounding, like terrible idle and stuff. That's all drivability too. If I was driving a 5.3 like I have a stock one, I would put a truck Norris cam in it. You could put something bigger in that if you want more cammy sound. Use a snowboat power like the Chaparral 2Js. Yeah, sucker fans. I had a pedal commander. It kept throwing my truck into limp mode. Has anybody else ever? But Connor, has anybody else ever tried one of those? Does it work? Does it make it more responsive? Drive-by-wire for swaps in old cars for sure. Yeah. I have a 1.2 liter IHI twin screw that I'm building manifold for my 2.5 liter single overhead cam Subaru. Twin charged it since I built the engine for a Gen 2 6266. That'd be cool if you have a blower and a turbo in there. Richard, have you used drive-by-wire with a good aftermarket ECU like a Link or a Motec? I think John's run their drive-by-wire stuff with a Motec. I don't do Link or Motec. Can you modulate the pedals is the real question. Yes. Did improve the response before it caused problems? Yeah. I show a lot of high 800 plus horsepower 5.3 builds, but what kind of transmission is needed to handle that kind of power? Yeah, I'm not a transmission YouTube channel, so it takes a built transmission to do something like that. Most people on that kind of thing would put some sort of modified 4L80 in it. Cam, yeah, that's right. That's good. You on the pole, you would for if you want power at higher RPM, like for a road race application, like you're talking about, that's a good idea. If you want low end torque, like the like the pole was talking about, where do you guys want that? Pedal commander is good on Fords where throttle response is 2 seconds late. That seems like a lot. If I'm pulling out of a street onto a busy street, I want it to go right now. I'm a carb man, so I prefer the wire. Yep. And you can see whenever I run stuff, it's drive-by-wire, but it's actually a piece of baling wire. We must be way past the LS versus Coyote part of the discussion. Yeah, we got into that pretty heavily. People were throwing things, and some people were throwing 4 valves, and some people were throwing 2 valves, and it was all good. If you want to run a manual, it's gonna need to be face or something made for that power. Yeah, what kind of manual trans would you do on something that's 800 wheel horsepower or more? Think the go-to transmission is a turbo 400. But see, back in the day, I would have said that. I would have said turbo 350 with a shift kit or turbo 400 with a bigger shift kit. But now I think that I would much rather have something that has an overdrive gear in it and a switch pitch torque converter. Drive-by-wire is electronic. Cable is mechanical. Some people seem a little confused. I'm not confused. Mine are drive-by-wire. Mine are actually drive-by-wire. They're a piece of wire that I have hooked to the throttle. So in that case, it is a manual throttle body that is driven by wire. Todd, all right, go take care of your business, man. Joe Granis puts 2,000 horsepower through a T56 Magnum. Man, that's a lot. For a Rock Racer Jeep, which 6-liter motor and cam would you suggest? Do you get to choose whatever 6-liter you want? All the 6-liters are good. And I don't understand what Rock Racer is. Are you going fast? Are you crawling over rocks? What are you doing? Speaker wire? No, I use baling wire. Think about going turbo 400 or 80E for the drag strip setup. Yeah. Modern problems and modern solutions. I have a low mile 6-liter with a 150 shot, thinking of running a 4-speed Muncie to replace the turbo 400. Do you guys think that a Muncie, I mean, they did use them behind big blocks, but will it stand up, do you guys think, for behind a nitrous 6-liter? Look up Rock Bouncer, pretty badass. All you have to do is tell me what you're doing. Junior, what are you doing with your combination? The cheap way to go is to get the Summit Pro LS stuff, and that will work really well. Muncie will stand up, no problem. Okay, Tim's saying yes. Richard, you watch Total Steel's videos on all the whiz-bang stuff about rings? I do occasionally, and I used to talk to, I can't remember his name. I used to work at Driven also. He has a very famous dad. What the heck's that guy's name? Somebody throw out his name. Who's the guy that does all the videos there? Lake Speed, there we go. Yeah, no, I love Lake. And he was one of the few people that when I was at the MPMC conference, I walked in and goes, "Oh, dude, I'm so glad you're here." He said, "Look at this stuff over here." And so we went into full geek mode for, I don't know, until they rang the bell and said, "You have to leave now." And there was a guy standing out there tapping his foot, waiting to get in. I'm like, "Dude, I'm not leaving." It's like, "Oh, you got it. You got it." Yeah, I like their stuff. How do you make 500 horsepower in LQ4? Just put a cam in it. Tristan, you're confusing the factory rating with what you're seeing on the videos. It's not the same thing. An LQ4, a bone stock one run with headers, will make about 400 the way that we test them on the engine dyno. They make more than that factory rating because they run with long tube headers. They run an optimized tune. The factory doesn't do that. They run with no accessories. So 500 horsepower is really easy with an LQ4. Is 185,000 miles 6-liter too high for a cam? No, all the big bang motors had 250 plus thousand miles. I've only done minor stuff with diesels. I had one Cummins 3500 Dodge way back. We did some chassis dyno stuff with it, but not on the engine dyno. Going boost to the future, I've seen some bad reviews on the Pro LS ring set. Okay, well, you could get something else. My uncle ran one behind 500 plus horsepower big block and a full body 4200 62 Biscayne. That's good then. A rock racer going fast up the rock. So just tell me what RPM range you're running then. I'm going to close out our poll because it's almost time to go. 69% saying no. I'm with you. I would rather have the torque on. Grand shifting, never double clutching like you should. Yeah, that's good. M22 is a rock crusher. There you go. About a 5.3 Gen 4 iron block. 30 thousandths is more than enough gap if you've measured it correctly. Yep. Nope, 30 thousandths is more than enough. I've never seen one that high after opening it up though. So it has me worried that it's, make sure that you're measuring it correctly, make sure that you square it and stuff. This chat has lots of rocks tonight. How fast I go to the wall or how far off the wall I went. Yep. Is 500 crank horsepower easy to get out of an L83? Yes. Can you change from drive-by-wire to drive-by-cable relatively easily? You can if you have a standalone management system. I don't know. You'd have to ask one of the tuners here if you can do that easily. But I don't think so. I don't think that it's real easy in the vehicle to do that. Nathan, you're selling a roller Fox body rust-free for $1,000. So if anybody needs a Fox body, hit them up. Where are you at? And on that note, it is time to go. See, so time flies when you're having fun. When people are yelling and screaming about Coyotes and LSs and boxing it out, it's all fun. It's all fun and games until somebody loses boost. And on that note, I will be back tomorrow. Yeah. Super Richie.